Today I'm taking the only high-speed rail in the US, Amtrak Acela, in first class. How's the seat service and experience in first class? Is it worth the often steep price tag? And how does it compare to similar services in other countries? Let's find out on this trip from Boston to New York. Looking forward to this one today. It's actually going to be my first ever ride with Amtrak. Quite a short one today, just under 4 hours, but I will be back exactly 1 month from today for a much longer overnight journey. Now today's journey is on the Acela, which is Amtrak's fastest train. It's actually the only train in the US that qualifies as a high-speed rail. They're currently in the process of rolling out the next gen Acela. I'm not 100% sure, but I think my journey today might unfortunately be on the old one. So I'm more than likely to be checking out the older products, but it'll still be interesting to see what that experience is like, see what the service is like on board, and we'll see how necessary those upgrades are that they're working on at the moment. But right, let's head over to the station. The Acela runs between Boston and Washington DC, with stops at key cities like New York, Philadelphia and Baltimore. Today I'm heading to New York, departing from Boston's South Station where the service originates. Thankfully just a 10-minute walk from my hotel today, and thankfully all the rain from earlier in the day had finally stopped. South Station opened in 1899 and today serves just under 2 million Amtrak passengers per year. I'd got here quite early as I decided to head straight over after checking out of my hotel, so I had a good hour and a half to kill before I'd be getting on board. First class passengers on the Acela can use the lounge here at South Station. And I thought it was quite a nice space. Quite a grand room with an assortment of seating options. Some workspaces, including a conference room, and a selection of drinks and snacks. Nothing too extensive on the food front here, but there was a decent selection of nibbles. And certainly plenty to keep me going until the meal on board. A good amount of soft drinks available too, and there was of course a coffee machine. There are a lot of different options on here, but whatever I selected didn't seem to quite come out right. So I tried to go for something a bit more fancy, but ended up just opting for a cappuccino when the initial pour didn't quite work. And I grabbed that and a stroopwafel. And I've got to say that coffee was pretty terrible. Maybe the machine wasn't set up correctly. Like I say, some of the options weren't coming out looking correct, so it maybe just needs some maintenance. But you're probably better off grabbing a coffee from the food courts outside of here before coming in the lounge. At least the stroopwafel thing was decent. But overall, the lounge was a nice spot to relax for a bit and get a bit of work done as well, and I found the time pass very quickly. And after a few more snacks and drinks, it was eventually time to go board the train. Our platform was announced 10 minutes before departure, and so I made my way down. We were called onto platform 6, and I was going to be seated in car number 1, which it turns out was right at the other end of the train, so I had a bit of a walk to make my way down there. And arriving at the platform straight away I could tell that this was not the next gen Acela, definitely an older model here. On my walk on the way down, I did have a bit of a look through the windows into the business class section, where seats are set out in a 2-2 configuration, but the seat design itself did look pretty similar to what I was going to have in first class, but here the seats are a bit bigger, set out in a 1-2. Stepping on board, the first thing I arrived at was the toilets, which I'm sure we'll be back to later, and then there was also a luggage rack for larger items of luggage. The seats in the first class cabin are definitely showing their age, but I was impressed at how spacious it felt on board, including tons of space in the aisle despite the wide seats. There's a mix of seating layouts including individual seats with tray tables and group seating with larger tables but less legroom. There's great luggage storage available above each seat and I had no issue stowing my case. Now for those who watch my channel regularly, you'll no doubt have noticed me using this suitcase from Carl Friedrich quite a lot over the last 6 months. Carl Friedrich have kindly sent this to me back in May of this year, and since then it's really become my go-to main case on those trips when I want to go carry-on only. Really handy for trips like this one that I'm on right now, where I want to carry quite a few changes of clothes with me, but I do need to be quickly jumping between flights with tight connection times, Ubers, trains. It's easily some of the nicest looking and most premium feeling luggage I've ever owned. And after a lot of use over the last 6 months, including a couple of times where I've checked the luggage in, it's still looking good as new. It's incredibly easy to wheel around, has loads of useful sections and organisation inside, sturdy TSA approved locks, so if you're interested in getting your own, check out Carl Friedrich in the link in the description. And now back to the train. My assigned seat was all the way back in the carriage at seat 16A. There's a good amount of legroom and a small footrest can be folded down if you wish, although I tended not to use this, I didn't find it added too much comfort. A tray table can be folded out, not the most elegant design, but it works. And there was a small storage pocket tucked away behind this. A member of the crew handed me a menu and gave me a choice of still or sparkling water. I went for the still. An interesting looking menu, although nothing stood out as a clear choice to me for the food. For the drinks, however, I was definitely going to go for an old-fashioned, and a drinks order was actually taken pretty much straight away. There were a couple of power outlets to the side of the seat, and above were individual reading lights. A curtain could be closed if I wished, but I definitely wanted to be able to check out the views on the way. Just a shame the window was a little mucky. The button for the recline was pretty stiff and I ended up needing to use two hands to get the job done. The seat doesn't recline a huge amount, but it is much needed as I didn't find the seat very comfortable when it was in the fully upright position. And in no time we were on our way as the train very slowly trundled out the station. Again, it is just a shame how scuffed up that window is. Thankfully for myself sat on the train, the view was pretty clear. It just doesn't come across well on the camera, unfortunately. And before we even made it fully out of the station, I was presented with an old-fashioned. Now that is excellent service. The glass was very full with small bits of ice, so not ideal for an old-fashioned, you prefer one big block of ice. But I did still really enjoy it, and I couldn't bring myself to drink it through the straw, even with all the little bits of ice. It wasn't long at all before our first stop at Back Bay in Boston, but once we were finally clear of here, we then started to properly pick up the pace. And with that pace, I was getting thrown about in my seat quite a bit. It's definitely not a smooth ride on here. The onboard service continued and I was handed some salted nuts to nibble on, and these were really nice. And it wasn't too long after this before I was presented with a hot towel. Now, the seat on board may be a little bit dated and shabby and not the most comfortable in the world, but I was getting pretty impressed with the soft product here. Very nice service items that you definitely wouldn't receive on a UK train, for example. After the hot towels had been handed out, meal orders were then taken. I decided to take a chance on the crab enchiladas. Now, I'm not a big seafood fan and I had no idea if I even like crab, to be honest, but it seemed like the best meal that they had, especially given the description and all the sides. The alternative choices just didn't seem to be super exciting, and I thought it'd be nice to try something new. After finishing my drink and the nuts, these were cleared relatively quickly. There was no proactive offer of another drink, however they were in the process of getting the food served at the time, so I was happy for them to work away at that for now. And then around about 50 minutes after we'd left Boston, my meal was served. Now, because of my seat location, I was basically the last person to be served, so that timing is not bad at all, especially considering I've had a cocktail and some nuts in that time. Now, I've got to be completely honest, this meal was a bit of a struggle for me. Turns out I do not like crab, or at least not the crab that they serve on Amtrak, and even the smell of it, to be honest, was very off-putting to me. But I was hungry, and I was the one who decided to take a chance on this, so I thought I've got to live with that decision and force it down. I found it absolutely disgusting. I'll never have it again, but I did manage to finish it all. I think the absolute highlight of the meal was probably the really soft and tasty warm bread roll with butter, which I think is saying something when the bread and butter is the highlight, but it was really nice bread. And thankfully the cheesecake for dessert was also good too. Not the biggest fan of pumpkin spice, but I did actually really enjoy this. Again, there was great service as pretty quickly after I'd finished this, they came around and cleared my tray. And I was proactively offered another drink at that time and I very happily accepted. Time to replace that lingering crab taste with some more whiskey. That's much better. We were getting some lovely scenery out the windows too, and I would recommend sitting on this side of the carriage if you are taking this journey. At some point after the meal, I walked over to the toilets. Well, I say walked, I was staggering a bit. Not from the drink, mind you, the train was just shaking violently from side to side at that moment, and I narrowly avoided falling into the laps of other passengers. The bathroom was pretty worn out and unimpressive, but it does the job, and to be honest, I would actually put this above every train bathroom I experienced in Japan, just by virtue of having facilities to properly wash and dry your hands. Back over at the seat, you can see what it looks like when it's reclined. Yep, that is actually the seat at a full recline. Now, I'm not 100% sure it was just because of the row I was in. It's possible my seat was just restricted by where the back wall was, but I didn't see any other seats in the carriage that looked more reclined than that. With 2.5 hours left on the journey, I decided to bring out my tablet and start watching some shows to pass the time, but of course continue to glance out the window whenever we'll go by somewhere scenic, which to be honest did happen an awful lot on this journey. I also passed quite a bit of time reading Broadway reviews to try and find a show to watch that evening, and ended up deciding to go see the Stranger Things show, which I would recommend if you're a fan of the Netflix series. I will say the story didn't quite grab me, but it was technically incredibly impressive. Easily the best effects of any theatre show I've ever seen. Our train did have a stop at New Haven, and this was the only extended stop that we took on the journey, so I decided to take the opportunity to get out and have a quick stroll on the platform and get some sun, which was very welcome after my rainy morning in Boston, and it also gave me a chance to get a proper view of the front of the train. After that, the rest of the journey did go by very quickly, and overall I was very happy with this journey and found it very relaxing. On the face of it, there's a lot to criticise. The seat is clearly very dated and a bit shabby, hence the need to roll out the new version, which is currently underway. And in terms of the food, well, I probably would have personally had a better meal if I'd just sat in business class and grabbed something from the cafe car. But you might have better luck with the menu than I did. Or just the good sense to order something that you actually know you'll like. But I had plenty of space, a relaxing few hours, and excellent service with free-flowing drink. Now I paid $202 for this journey. Is that steep? Sure, but it's comparable to what I paid for similar journey length in first class on a UK train such as LNER Azuma First Class, and I'd argue that both the seat and service on offer here were superior. It can definitely cost a lot more than this, however. On the day I travelled, the same day booking would have been over $500. I definitely don't think it'd be worth it for that. But I previously only really heard bad things about Amtrak when compared to trains in other countries, but based on this experience I was very pleasantly surprised, and I'm looking forward to my overnight journey next month, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one. Also just want to say a massive thank you to my Patreon supporters, thank you to all of you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.